I, 26F, never imagined that my son's baptism would become the day that changed everything in my life forever. When I woke up that Sunday morning, I thought it would be a day of celebration and joy, a day when we would welcome my beautiful baby boy into our faith community, surrounded by family and friends. Instead, it became the day when years of silent suffering finally exploded into the open, the day when I finally found my voice after letting it be silenced for so long. The day when my mother-in-law Barbara learned that there are limits to what a person can endure. Looking back now, I can see that this confrontation had been building for years. Every single snide comment that Barbara made about my appearance, every judgmental look she gave me when I walked into a room, every moment she made me feel like I was not good enough for her precious son. They had all been piling up inside me like pressure building in a volcano. That Sunday morning at the baptism, the volcano finally erupted. I met Mark when we were both in college. He was studying business while I was working on my teaching degree. We met at a coffee shop near campus where I was working part-time to help pay for my education. He came in every morning for a large black coffee and a blueberry muffin. After 2 weeks of small talk, he finally asked me out. Our first date was perfect. He was charming and funny and made me feel like the most interesting person in the world. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. I fell for him hard and fast. He didn't tell me much about his family at first. He mentioned that his parents were divorced and that he was closer to his mother. He said she could be a bit difficult sometimes, but that she meant well. I should have paid more attention to the way his face tightened when he talked about her. I should have noticed how he changed the subject whenever I asked about meeting her. But I was young and in love, and I thought that everything would work out perfectly. The first time I met Barbara, 54F, was 6 months into our relationship. Mark had been putting it off with various excuses, but finally ran out of reasons to delay. We drove to her house on a Saturday afternoon. The entire drive there, Mark kept giving me advice. Don't mention my job right away. Don't talk about my family too much. Don't wear anything too casual, but also not too fancy. Make sure I complimented her house. Traveled up to my face. I felt like I was being scanned and found wanting. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. She just looked at Mark and said, "So this is her." Not "nice to meet you" or "I've heard so much about you," just "so this is her." Like I was something unpleasant he had dragged in. That first meeting set the tone for everything that followed. Barbara made it clear without actually saying it that she thought Mark could do better. She asked about my family and then made little humming sounds when I told her my dad worked in construction and my mom was a nurse. She asked about my education and looked surprised when I said I was in college. "Oh, you're actually getting a degree?" she said, like she had assumed I was just some girl hanging around campus trying to catch a husband. Throughout dinner, she compared me to Mark's ex-girlfriend, Jennifer. Jennifer came from a good family. Jennifer was studying to be a lawyer. Jennifer knew which fork to use for salad. Jennifer's mother was in Barbara's book club. By the end of the meal, I knew more about Jennifer than I knew about some of my closest friends. Mark kept trying to change the subject, but Barbara always steered it back to how wonderful Jennifer had been. I went home that night feeling completely defeated. Mark apologized in the car, saying his mom was just protective and would warm up to me eventually. But she never did. If anything, she got worse as our relationship got more serious. When Mark and I moved in together, she told him he was making a mistake. When we got engaged, she actually cried. Not happy tears, sad, disappointed tears like someone had died. Planning our wedding was a nightmare. Barbara had opinions about everything, and none of them aligned with what I wanted. The venue I chose wasn't nice enough. The flowers I picked were too common. The dress I loved made me look heavy, according to her. She actually said that. Standing in the bridal shop, in front of the mirror and the sales associate, she said the dress made me look heavy and suggested I might want to lose a few pounds before the wedding. My mother was there when Barbara said that. I saw her face go red with anger, but I grabbed her hand and squeezed it. "Don't make a scene," I silently begged. "Let's just get through this." That became my mantra. Just get through this. Would drop by unannounced and criticize our apartment. The furniture was cheap. The curtains were the wrong color. The kitchen was too small. Why didn't we have a guest room for when she wanted to stay over? She would open our refrigerator and comment on our food choices. She would run her finger along surfaces checking for dust. Once, she actually rearranged our living room while we were at work. I came home to find all our furniture in different places and Barbara sitting on our couch like nothing was strange. Mark's response to all of this was always the same. That's just how she is. Or, she means well. Or, try not to take it personally. But how could I not take it personally when every criticism was aimed at me? She never complained about things that were Mark's responsibility. It was always my cooking that was bland, my housekeeping that was lacking, my influence that was causing problems. When I got pregnant, I thought things might get better. Maybe a grandchild would soften Barbara's heart toward me. Maybe she would see me as the mother of her grandchild instead of the woman who stole her son. I was so naive. The pregnancy just gave her more ammunition. Was I taking the right vitamins? Was I exercising too much? Not enough? Was I sure I should be working while pregnant? Did I really think I could handle being a working mother? She started buying baby things without asking me. Not just little gifts, but major items. A crib that didn't match the nursery I was planning. A stroller that was different from the one I had researched and chosen. Clothes and styles I would never pick. When I tried to politely decline or exchange these items, she would get Mark involved. "Mom is just trying to help," he would say. "Don't be ungrateful." The baby shower was another disaster. Barbara insisted on hosting it, but then planned everything according to her preferences, not mine. She invited her friends instead of mine. She chose a theme I hated. She even made a speech about how she hoped the baby would inherit the family's good genes, with a pointed look at me that everyone noticed. My sister wanted to say something, but I begged her not to. "Just get through this," I told myself again. "Just smile and get through this." Labor was long and difficult. 23 hours of pain and exhaustion before my beautiful boy finally arrived. He was perfect. Absolutely perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a foot. At least he got Mark's nose. Not congratulations, not how beautiful he was, not how happy she was. Just another dig at my appearance, even in that sacred moment. My mother was in the room when Barbara said that. I saw her jaw clench and her hands ball into fists. But she didn't say anything because she knew I wouldn't want a scene. My mother understood that I was trying to keep the peace for Mark's sake. But I could see how much it hurt her to watch her daughter be insulted and do nothing about it. The first months of motherhood were exhausting. The baby wasn't sleeping well, I was recovering from a difficult delivery, and I was trying to figure out how to be a mom. Barbara's constant visits and criticism made everything harder. She would come over and immediately start pointing out what I was doing wrong. I was holding him wrong. I was feeding him wrong. His clothes were too warm, then too light. The nursery was too bright, then too dark. Nothing I did was right in her eyes. She would make these observations in front of Mark, but he never seemed to really hear them. Or maybe he just chose not to hear them. When I would bring it up later, he would say I was being too sensitive, hormonal, overreacting. He would remind me that his mother raised 3 children and knew what she was doing. The implication was clear. She knew better than me. She was better than me. I started dreading her visits. When I heard her car in the driveway, my whole body would tense up. My stomach would twist into knots. Sometimes I would pretend the baby was sleeping just to avoid her. But she would wait. She would sit in my living room and wait until he woke up so she could hold him and tell me everything I was doing wrong as a mother. The comments got more personal as time went on. She would mention how quickly Jennifer had lost her baby weight after having kids. She would talk about how Jennifer's children were so well behaved and advanced for their ages. She would wonder out loud if my son was meeting his milestones on time, implying that maybe he wasn't because of something I was doing wrong. Mark remained oblivious, or at least pretended to be. When I finally broke down crying one night and begged him to talk to his mother, he said I was making a big deal out of nothing. She was just trying to help. She just wanted what was best for the baby. Why couldn't I see that? Why did I have to? Aspect of the planning. The reception had to be in the church hall. We had to invite all of her friends. The baby had to wear the family christening gown that had been in Mark's family for generations. This was the first time I heard about any family christening gown. When I asked Mark about it, he seemed vague. He thought maybe his mom had mentioned it before, but he wasn't sure. It didn't matter to him either way. Whatever made everyone happy, that was always his position. Whatever made everyone happy. Except everyone never included me. I tried to assert myself in the planning. I had found a beautiful outfit for the baby. Simple and elegant with tiny crosses embroidered on the collar. My mother had bought it as a gift, and I loved it. When I showed it to Barbara, she barely looked at it before dismissing it. "Oh, that's nice if you don't have anything better," she said. "But of course he'll wear the family gown." I should have stood up to her then. I should have said that my son would wear what I chose for him to wear, but I didn't. I was so tired from the sleepless nights and the constant criticism that I didn't have the energy to fight. I told myself it was just an outfit. It didn't matter. What mattered was the ceremony itself, the meaning behind it. Let Barbara have this victory. Pick your battles, I told myself. This wasn't worth fighting over. The morning of the baptism arrived gray and drizzly. I took it as an omen, but tried to push the feeling aside. I dressed my son in the outfit my mother had bought first, just to see him in it. He looked perfect, like a little angel. I took photos and sent them to my mom with a heart emoji. Then, with a heavy heart, I changed him into the family gown Barbara had delivered the night before. The gown was clearly old. It had that yellowish tinge that old white fabric gets. It smelled like mothballs despite Barbara's claim that she had it cleaned. It was too big for my son, making him look like he was swimming in fabric. But I put it on him anyway because that's what I always did. I gave in. I kept the peace. I avoided the conflict. Barbara arrived at our house early, of course. She walked in without knocking, as she always did, and immediately started criticizing. My hair wasn't formal enough. My dress was too bright for such a solemn occasion. The baby's car seat was very formal, very traditional. Nothing like the casual church my family attended. I could see my relatives trying to figure out when to stand and sit, where to go, what to do. Barbara noticed, too, and I heard her whisper something to her sister about some people not knowing proper church etiquette. We took our places in the front row. I held my son, trying to focus on the significance of the moment. This was about welcoming him into our faith community. This was about surrounding him with love and support. This was supposed to be one of the most important days of his young life, but all I could think about was Barbara sitting behind me, probably cataloging everything she thought I was doing wrong. The priest began the ceremony with a welcome and an explanation of the sacrament of baptism. He talked about new life in Christ, about being washed clean, about joining the family of God. Beautiful words that should have filled me with joy and peace, but I could hear Barbara whispering behind me. Comments to her sister about the priest's accent. He was from the Philippines, and apparently that was worthy of discussion during the sacred ceremony. When it came time for the godparents to step forward, Barbara had opinions about them too. We had chosen my brother and Mark's sister as godparents. Barbara had wanted us to choose her best friend's son instead of my brother. She had made her displeasure known for weeks leading up to this day. Now, as my brother stood at the baptismal font, I heard her whisper something about hoping he took the responsibility seriously. The actual baptism was beautiful, despite everything. My son didn't cry when the water was poured over his head. He just looked surprised, and then curious, his big eyes taking in everything around him. The priest blessed him and welcomed him into the church. For a moment, I was able to block out Barbara and just focus on my baby, on this milestone in his life. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the church hall for the reception. I had worked hard to make it nice despite Barbara's interference. Simple decorations in white and gold, a cake from my favorite bakery, food that people could enjoy while mingling. My mother and sister had come early to help set everything up, and it looked beautiful. Not fancy enough for Barbara's standards, I'm sure, but beautiful to me. Barbara walked through the reception hall like she was inspecting it. I watched her stop at each decoration, examining it held my son with tears in her eyes, blessing him in the old way, in the language of our ancestors. It was a beautiful moment that Barbara somehow managed to cheapen with a comment about foreign customs to someone standing nearby. About an hour into the reception, I finally had a moment to catch my breath. Mark was talking to his cousins. The baby was being passed around among the relatives, and I was standing by the gift table just trying to center myself. That's when Barbara approached me. She was holding my son, who had ended up in her arms as he made his way around the room. She stood there for a moment, looking at me with that expression she always had, that mixture of disappointment and disdain that I had become so familiar with over the years. Then, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, she spoke the words that would change everything. "You know," she said, bouncing my son gently in her arms, "this child will have a better life than yours." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I felt like time stopped. Everything went silent except for the echo of those words in my head. This child will have a better life than yours. Not, I hope this child has a wonderful life. Not, this child is blessed to have you as a mother. But specifically, pointedly, cruelly, this child will have a better life than yours. Everyone within earshot had heard it. I saw my sister's mouth drop open in shock. My aunt's eyes went wide. Mark's cousin stopped mid-sentence and turned to stare. Even Barbara's own sister looked uncomfortable. They all understood what she had just said. She had just announced, in public, at my son's baptism, that my life wasn't good enough, that I wasn't good enough, that my son would be better off without my influence. But it was more than that. It was a threat. She was telling me that she would make sure my son knew he was better than me. She would spend his whole life telling him that his mother was less than. She would poison him against me, drop by drop, comment by comment, just as she had been trying to poison my marriage from the beginning. She was claiming my son as her do-over baby, her chance to raise a child away from my inferior influence. Something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed anger and hurt rushed through me like a flood. All the times I had challenge her. "I'm allowed to hold him." "You're right," I said, and I saw a flicker of triumph in her eyes. She thought I was backing down like I always did. But I wasn't. "You are his grandmother, but you will never, ever speak about me like that again. Not to me, not to him, not to anyone." The entire room was watching now. The happy chatter had died completely. Everyone was staring at us. This tableau of two women facing off over a baby at his own baptism. Mark had started moving toward us, his face pale with panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," Barbara said, but her face was getting red. She knew exactly what she had done, and she knew everyone had heard it. "Yes, you do," I said, my voice getting stronger. "You know exactly what you said and what you meant by it. You've spent years making little comments, little digs, trying to make me feel like I'm not good enough for your son. Like I'm some kind of disappointment you have to tolerate. But I'm done. Do you hear me? I'm done." "How dare you speak to me like that?" Barbara started, her voice rising with indignation. But I cut her off. "How dare you?" I said, my voice getting louder now. "How dare you stand in a church, at my son's baptism, holding my child, and insult me? How dare you try to make this sacred day about your petty jealousy and judgment? How dare you suggest that my son would be better off without me?" Mark reached us then, putting his hand on my arm. "Hey, let's all calm down," he said, trying to diffuse the situation like always. I pulled away from him sharply. "Don't touch me," I said, "and don't you dare try to calm me down. Your mother just said, in front of everyone, that our son will have a better life than mine. Do you understand what she's saying? Do you get it? Or are you going to pretend this is nothing, just like you always do?" Mark's face went from pale to red. He looked at his mother, searching her face. "Mom, you didn't really say that, did you?" Barbara's mask finally slipped completely. Her face contorted with anger and something else. Maybe it was fear. Fear that her son might finally see her for what she was. "Well, I only meant that we can give him opportunities," she said, trying to backtrack. "And strong. I think you're jealous. I think you can't stand that your son chose me, that he loves me, that he created this beautiful child with me. I think you're so bitter and controlling that you can't stand anything that doesn't center around you. You can't keep my grandchild from me." Barbara suddenly shouted, clutching my son tighter. Watch me, I said. I reached out and took my son from her arms. She resisted for a moment, but then let go, probably realizing how it would look if she physically fought me for my own child. I've spent years letting you walk all over me because I wanted to keep the peace. Because I loved Mark and I thought that meant I had to accept you. But I don't. I don't have to accept someone who treats me like I'm beneath them. And I certainly don't have to let that person around my child. Mark tried again, his voice desperate. Can we please just talk about this later? Everyone's watching. Good, I said, looking around the room at all the shocked faces. Let them watch. Let them see what your mother really is. Let them see what you've been allowing to happen. I turned to address everyone. I'm sorry you all had to witness this, I said, my voice carrying across the silent hall. But I'm not sorry it happened. I should have stood up for myself years ago. I should have demanded respect from the beginning. But I thought keeping the peace was more important than keeping my dignity. I was wrong. I looked back at Barbara. She was shaking with rage, her carefully styled hair trembling, her face now purple with anger and humiliation. You have a choice, I told her. You can apologize. Really apologize, not some fake "I'm sorry you were offended" nonsense, but a real apology acknowledging what you've done. And we can try to move forward with respect and boundaries. Or you can keep being the person you've been, and you can be out of our lives. But this, what we've been doing, this toxic dance where you insult me and I pretend it's fine, this ends now. Mark, Barbara said, turning to her son with tears suddenly appearing in her eyes. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Mark looked at me, then at his mother, then back at me. I could see him struggling. His whole life, his mother had been the center of his universe. She had controlled him with guilt and manipulation. You're taking her side? I'm taking my family's side, Mark said, his voice getting stronger. My wife and son are my family. And Mom, you owe her an apology, a real one. The silence stretched out. Barbara looked around the room, probably searching for support, for someone to take her side. But she found none. Even her own sister looked uncomfortable and wouldn't meet her eyes. She had crossed a line that everyone recognized, even those who might normally sympathize with her. Finally, she grabbed her purse from a nearby table. I don't have to stand here and be attacked like this, she said, her voice shaking with rage. When you come to your senses and realize what you've done, you know where to find me. She started walking toward the door, then turned back for one last shot. And don't expect me to forget this humiliation. Don't expect me to forgive being ambushed and attacked at what should have been a beautiful family occasion. You ruined it, I said clearly. Not me, you. With your cruel words and your constant need to tear me down, you ruined it. But at least now everyone knows who you really are. She left then, her heels clicking angrily on the floor, the door slamming behind her. The sound echoed through the hall like a final punctuation mark on years of abuse. After she left, there was a moment where nobody seemed to know what to do. The silence was deafening. Then my mother walked over and put her arm around me. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, she whispered. It's about time someone stood up to that woman. Slowly, conversations started again. People came up to me throughout the rest of the reception. Some offered support and encouragement. Others just squeezed my hand or gave me understanding looks. My grandmother pulled me aside and said in her broken English, "You strong woman now. Good for baby to see strong mama." My sister took the baby so I could sit down and collect myself. I was shaking, adrenaline coursing through my body. I had done it. I had finally stood up to Barbara. In public. At my son's baptism. In front of everyone. Part of me couldn't believe it had happened. Part of me wanted to run after her and apologize, to go back to keeping the peace. But a bigger part, the part that had finally woken up, her, Mark. You chose her feelings over mine every single time. I'm sorry, he said, and I could see tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. From the very beginning, I should have told her that disrespecting you meant disrespecting me. I should have protected you. That's what husbands do. They protect their wives. But I failed. I failed you and I failed our son. Yes, I said simply. You did. And we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to have to figure out if our marriage can survive this, because I can't go back to how things were. I won't be the wife who stays quiet while her mother-in-law abuses her. I won't raise my son in a home where his mother is constantly diminished. I won't do it. We stayed at the reception until all the guests had left. People were extra kind, helping with cleanup, making sure we were okay. My family rallied around us, packing up gifts and decorations. Mark's family was notably absent except for his sister, who hugged me before she left and whispered, "It was about time someone told her off." That night, after we had put our son to bed in his crib, Mark and I talked for hours. About his mother, about our marriage, about how we had gotten to this point. He told me things about his childhood I had never heard before. How his mother had controlled every aspect of his life. How she had driven his father away with her constant criticism and demands. How he had learned early that the only way to survive was to appease her, to never challenge her, to always choose the path of least resistance. But that's not living, I told him. That's just existing, and it's not the example we want to set for our son. Do you want him to grow up thinking it's okay to let people treat him badly? Do you want him to learn that keeping the peace is more important than self-respect? No, Mark said firmly. No, I don't want that for him. The next day, Mark called his mother. I could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was clear she was not apologetic. She was angry. She was the victim in her mind. We had humiliated her. We had turned everyone against her. We had ruined what should have been a beautiful day. Mark kept trying to explain that she had been the one to ruin it with her cruel words, but she wouldn't hear it. Finally, that put all the blame on me for my reaction, rather than on her for her actions. That's not good enough, I told Mark. She needs to acknowledge what she actually said and why it was wrong. She needs to take responsibility. It took another month before she finally did. She came to our house, having called first to ask permission. She looked older somehow, smaller. Maybe it was because I was no longer afraid of her. She sat in our living room, the room she had once rearranged without permission, and gave an actual apology. "I'm sorry for saying your son would have a better life than yours," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "It was cruel and wrong. I've been cruel to you for years, and I'm sorry for that too." I accepted her apology, but I also set clear boundaries. She could see the baby, but visits had to be scheduled in advance. She couldn't offer parenting advice unless specifically asked. She couldn't make comments about me, my family, or how I was raising my son. If she crossed those boundaries, the visit would end immediately. "That seems excessive," she said, her old personality flashing through. "Those are the terms," I said simply. "Take them or leave them." She took them, grudgingly. The first few visits were awkward. She would start to say something critical and then catch herself, or I would see her notice something she disapproved of and bite her tongue. It was clear how much effort it took for her to not be cruel, which was sad when I thought about it. Being mean had become such a natural state for her that being civil required conscious effort. Mark changed too after the baptism confrontation. He started noticing things he had been blind to before. When his mother would start to make a snide comment and then stop herself, he would see it. When she would get that look on her face like she was judging something, he would recognize it. He began to understand what I had been dealing with all those years. We went to couples counseling to work through the damage that had been done. The therapist helped Mark understand how his upbringing had conditioned him to enable his mother's behavior. She helped me understand that my need to keep the peace at all costs came from my own childhood issues. Together, we learned how to be a team, how to put our family first, how to maintain boundaries even when it was uncomfortable. My son is 3 years old now. He calls Barbara. Saw her catch herself, but not quite quickly enough. "Barbara?" I said calmly. That sounded like a criticism. "Would you like to rephrase?" She turned red but nodded. "I just meant there are many good schools in the area," she said stiffly. "Thank you for clarifying," I said, and we moved on. But she knew I had heard her real meaning, and she knew I wouldn't tolerate it. The baptism story has become something of a legend in our family. Different people tell it different ways depending on their perspective. Barbara's sister tells it as the day I lost my mind and attacked poor Barbara for no reason. My sister tells it as the day I finally grew a spine and stood up to a bully. Mark's cousins tell it as the most dramatic baptism they've ever attended. The priest, who I ran into at the grocery store recently, just smiled and said it was certainly memorable. But I don't care about their versions of the story. I know my truth. I know that was the day I chose myself. The day I chose my son. The day I chose our future over maintaining a toxic past. It was messy and public, and not at all how I would have planned it. But sometimes, the most important moments in our lives aren't planned. Sometimes they just happen when we finally reach our breaking point. Barbara sent me a birthday card this year. Inside, she had written, "To a strong mother." That's all. No passive-aggressive comments about my age, no backhanded compliments, no subtle digs. Just an acknowledgement of what I am. What I always was but had been too afraid to show. I kept the card. Not because I need her validation, but because it represents how far we've come. From that terrible moment at the baptism when she held my baby and told me his life would be better than mine, to this grudging respect. It wasn't the relationship I had hoped for when I married Mark. I had dreamed of a warm, loving mother-in-law who would be like a second mother to me. Instead, I got Barbara. But we found a way to coexist that protects my son from the poison she spread for so many years. My mother asked me recently if I regretted making such a scene at the baptism. She wondered if I wished I had handled it more privately, more quietly. I told her the truth. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Every day that I accepted Barbara's disrespect with me. You know, baptism is about transformation. It's about being reborn. It seems like that happened for more than just your son that day. He was right. That day, I was reborn too. Reborn as someone who wouldn't accept less than respect. Reborn as a mother who would protect her child from anyone who would harm him, physically or emotionally. Reborn as a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't let anyone convince her otherwise. The transformation wasn't just mine, though. Mark was reborn as a husband who puts his wife first. He was reborn as a father who will protect his family from toxic influences, even if those influences come from his own mother. He was reborn as a man who can see clearly instead of through the fog of a lifetime of manipulation. Even Barbara was transformed, though she would never admit it. She was reborn as a grandmother with boundaries, someone who has to consider her words and actions instead of just spewing whatever criticism comes to mind. She was forced to confront the fact that her behavior has consequences, that she can't treat people badly and expect them to just accept it. Last week, we had Barbara over for Sunday dinner. It's become our routine. She arrives at exactly 5 o'clock, never a minute early. She brings dessert. Always store-bought because she knows I prefer to cook the meal myself. She compliments the food, even if I can see her struggling to find something nice to say. She plays with my son for exactly 1 hour after dinner, then says she needs to get home. During these visits, I watch her watching me. I can see her cataloging things she disapproves of but can't mention. The way I let my son eat with his fingers sometimes. The toys scattered across the living room floor. The casual way Mark and I interact, so different from the formal relationship she had with her ex-husband. She sees all of it, judges all of it, but says nothing. Because she knows that one comment, one criticism, one moment of cruelty, and the visit is over. It's not a warm relationship. We're not close. We'll never go shopping together or share secrets over coffee. She'll never be the grandmother who babysits so Mark and I can have date nights. But it's functional. It's civil. Most importantly, it's safe for my son. He will never hear his grandmother speak badly about his mother. He will never be poisoned against me the way she tried to poison Mark against myself again. The person I was before I started trying to please someone who could never be pleased. The person I was before I accepted that being loved meant being diminished. The person I was before I believed that keeping the peace was more important than keeping my self-respect. My son will grow up seeing that person. He'll see a mother who stands up for herself, a mother who demands respect, a mother who sets boundaries and enforces them. He'll learn from my example that love doesn't require you to accept mistreatment, that family doesn't give anyone the right to be cruel, that sometimes the most important battles are the ones fought in church halls at baptisms, with everyone watching. Barbara's words that day were meant to wound me. This child will have a better life than yours. She meant it as the ultimate insult, a declaration that I was lacking, that my life was something to be risen above. But I've transformed those words into something else, a promise. Yes, my son will have a better life than mine. Not because my life is bad, but because his life will include lessons I had to learn the hard way. He will know from the beginning that he deserves respect. He won't spend years accepting unacceptable behavior because he thinks that's what family does. He won't silence himself to keep others comfortable. He won't make himself small so that others can feel big. He will have a better life because he'll start with the knowledge it took me 26 years to gain. The vase I had been tempted to throw that day still sits on our mantel. It's a large, decorative piece that had been on the gift table at the reception. In that moment of rage, my hand had actually moved toward it. I had imagined the satisfaction of hurling it at Barbara, of watching it shatter against the wall behind her. But I'm glad I didn't. Not because she didn't deserve my anger, but because using my words was so much more powerful. Physical violence would have made me the villain in everyone's story. They would have talked about the crazy daughter-in-law who threw a vase at poor Barbara. The focus would have been on my actions instead of her words. But by standing my ground with words alone, by articulating years of pain and frustration, by demanding respect in clear terms, I became the hero of my own story. And everyone who was there knows it. Mark has become the partner I always needed him to be. It took a public
Get back to her, she simply said, "Of course. Let me know what works for you. No huffing, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments about how other grandmothers get to spend time with their grandchildren. Just acceptance of the new reality. This is our life now. Boundaries and balance, respect and consequences. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension, still times when I can feel Barbara biting her tongue to keep from saying something cruel. There are still family gatherings where the baptism story hangs in the air like an unspoken presence. But it's so much better than it was. So much healthier. So much more honest. My son is starting to understand family dynamics in his own 3-year-old way. He knows that Gamma has rules about being nice. He knows that if someone is mean, they have to take a break. He knows that Mommy and Daddy are a team and that they protect each other. These are simple concepts for him now, but they're laying the groundwork for understanding boundaries and respect as he grows older. Sometimes Barbara looks at him with such longing, and I know she's imagining how different things could have been. If she had been kind from the beginning, if she had welcomed me into the family instead of treating me like an intruder, if she had seen me as a partner in loving her son instead of competition for his affection. But those are her regrets to carry, not mine. I have my own regrets, of course. I regret the years I wasted trying to earn the approval of someone who had decided I wasn't worthy before she even knew me. I regret the tears I shed over her cruelty. I regret the times I let her make me feel small. But I don't regret the baptism. I don't regret finally standing up and saying, "Enough." I don't regret claiming my dignity in front of everyone. The other day, a friend who is dealing with her own difficult mother-in-law asked me for advice. She wanted to know how I found the courage to stand up to Barbara that day. The truth is, it wasn't courage. It was desperation. I had been pushed so far past my breaking point that staying silent would have destroyed me. Speaking up wasn't brave, it was survival. But I told her this: you don't have to wait until you're desperate. You don't have to wait until someone insults you at your child's baptism. You can start now, today, with small boundaries. You can say,
changed everything. It changed my marriage, my relationship with Barbara, my sense of self-worth. Most importantly, it changed the trajectory of my son's life. He won't grow up watching his mother be diminished. He won't learn that love requires accepting disrespect. He won't believe that family means enduring cruelty. The baptism photos tell the whole story if you know how to look at them. In the early pictures, the ones from before the confrontation, I'm smiling, but my eyes are tired. I look smaller somehow, diminished, like I'm trying to take up less space. Mark stands beside me, but there's a distance between us, a gap that speaks to the emotional chasm Barbara had created in our marriage. Then there are no pictures for a while. The photographer, probably sensing the tension, stopped taking photos during the confrontation. But there's one picture from after, taken by my sister on her phone. In it, I'm holding my son. Really holding him, not just posing for a photo. Mark has his arm around me, really around me, protective and present. And I'm smiling. Not the fake smile from earlier, but a real smile. The smile of someone who has just discovered she's stronger than she knew. That's the photo I treasure. Not the formal portraits from before everything went wrong, but that candid shot from after everything went right. Because that's when everything actually went right, when I stopped pretending and started protecting. When Mark stopped enabling and started supporting. When we stopped being three separate people trying to navigate Barbara's minefield and became a united family with boundaries. Barbara wasn't wrong when she said my son would have a better life than mine. She was just wrong about why. It won't be better because he's kept away from my influence. It will be better because he's learning from my experience. He's benefiting from the boundaries I've set and the respect I've demanded. He's growing up in a household where his mother's worth is recognized and protected. The baptism was supposed to be about welcoming my son into a community of faith, and it accomplished that, just not in the way anyone expected. Because faith isn't just about religion, it's about believing in something. That day, I found faith in myself, faith that I was worth defending, faith that my son deserved better than watching his mother be torn down, faith that speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it causes a scene. And she does, mostly. There are still moments when I see the old Barbara trying to surface, the one who thinks she's better than everyone, especially me. But now she catches herself, or I catch her, and she stops. The boundaries hold. The consequences are real. The respect, even if grudging, is maintained. My mother-in-law said my child would have a better life than mine. She meant it as an insult. I've made it a promise. His life will be better because he'll never spend years accepting disrespect while being told it's love. He'll never believe that family means enduring cruelty. He'll never think that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your dignity. He'll know from the start what took me 26 years to learn, that you are worth defending, that boundaries are necessary, and that sometimes the most important moment of your life happens when you finally say enough. The vase sits on our mantel still, a silent witness to choices made and unmade. Sometimes visitors admire it, not knowing its significance in our family history. "It's lovely," they'll say. "Yes," I reply. "It's stronger than it looks." Just like me. Just like the family we've built from the pieces of what broke that day at the baptism. Stronger for having been tested. Stronger for having survived. Stronger for having finally fought back. That baptism changed everything. Not in the way anyone planned or wanted, but in the way that was necessary. It was messy and dramatic and public and painful. But it was also liberating and transformative and powerful and right. It was the day I stopped accepting the unacceptable. The day I chose my dignity over false peace. The day I showed my son that his mother is someone worth respecting because she respects herself. And that, more than any blessing or ceremony or tradition, is the gift I gave my son at his baptism. The gift of a mother who knows her worth. The gift of a family with healthy boundaries. The gift of seeing that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it causes a scene, is sometimes the most important thing you can do. Barbara was right about one thing. My son will have a better life. Just not for the reasons she thought.